The sound arrived like a sliver of ice, so thin it was polite, so sharp it made the test subject flinch. On Priya Nayar's screen, a needle of color knifed through the 2-3 kHz band and bloomed into a bright wound. "Stop the sweep," she said. "Mark the peak." In the observation room, a middle-aged volunteer rubbed his temple. "I'm fine," he lied. Elena Voss watched without blinking. Calm Loop, her company's flagship, sat innocent in its cradle until the tone slipped and became a pinprick behind the eyes. "Again," Marcus Hale said from the doorway. "We'll smooth it in firmware." Priya didn't look at him. You can't patch a physical resonance. Elena raised a palm. "Finish the protocol." Her voice was low and even. By the third run, the spike found the volunteer again. Priya ended the session, filed the adverse event report, and stepped into the hall where printers spit graphs like snow. On Elena's phone messages stacked the comms director asking for language just in case a board member who'd heard chatter a journalist off the record. The company's name trended next to headache. Marcus tapped menus that didn't need him. Boost the noise floor mask, the band problem hidden. Priya pivoted the monitor so the thin mountain was all anyone could see. Hide it here, and it moves there. It's geometry. Elena glanced at the clock. 9 a.m., internal demo, she said. 3 options, firmware mitigation, enclosure revision, and a third path I don't see yet. No leaks? Marcus smirked. There is no third path. Then we'll invent one, Elena said, ending the meeting. Night replaced day 1 badge at a time. Buildings changed their sound after hours, fewer shoes, more ducks, a deeper whisper. Evan Reed slid a mop along the lab corridor and let the place talk. He never wore earbuds inside Oralis. He was 3 doors from the acoustic suite when he heard it. Not the spike itself, which the gear had bullied into silence, but a cousin of it, the shimmer left after a string stops. He paused. The wheels of his cart hummed in sympathy. He set the brake and reached for a canister of powdered cleanser. No one had ever asked why he sometimes dusted the floor before mopping. He had never explained. He sifted a faint ribbon across a tile, then rapped his knuckles on the aluminum door of the test room. The powder trembled, not uniformly, but gathering into 2 pale islands with a saddle of stillness between them. He watched until the tremor settled. Most people saw dust. He saw a map. From the side pocket, he pulled a notebook, creased clean, and drew a rectangle, a narrow waist, 2 mirrored curves. The world called them F-holes because they looked like a letter. He drew them because they turned shriek into song. A badge beeped down the hall. He swept the powder into the pan and pushed on a quiet man doing a quiet job. Elena rode the elevator alone. Between floors, she let her jaw go slack and her tongue touch the roof of her mouth, the old trick for escaping a noise that wanted to live inside the skull. When the doors opened, she was composed again. Her office faced the city. In a private drawer waited a tablet no one else used. On it, an old video her older brother at 12 hands to his ears in a living room that meant well, but sounded wrong. She watched 5 seconds, closed it, and returned to work. Across town, Evan eased his apartment door open with the toe of his boot. Maybird Maya swung her feet off the couch, a blanket webbed around her. "Too bright," she whispered, pointing toward the kitchen where the refrigerator clicked alive and a hum rode the ceiling into the room. "Got it." He dimmed the lights and held his arms without touching yet. Asking was part of the ritual. She nodded and he gathered her in. "You want to hum?" She nodded again. He started low, an easy note that vibrated more than it sounded. The trick wasn't to drown the world, but to give the nervous system a sound to believe. Her breath answered his in and out with little stutters, then steadier. "What note is that?" she asked, drowsy now. "Somewhere between A and kindness." She made a face that meant, "Dad, you're being poetic again." He accepted the verdict, tucked the blanket under her chin, and set a fan on low so the edges of the night would be softer. When she slept, he opened the notebook. He sketched comm loop from memory, the ring, the wiring channels, the sensor dimple. Inside the ring, he drew S-curves not touching, lines that told air where not to pile up. He hadn't built an instrument in years. He still knew the feel of spruce under a knife the way maple answered when the arch was right. Life had carved other shapes out of him. Hospital invoices, shift schedules, a second-hand crib, but the curve lived in his fingers and in the way he listened for things people hadn't named. Back on the floor for the late pass, he paused at the recycle bin outside R&D. A cracked Comloop housing sat on a drift of molded trays tagged discard. He lifted it, held it to his ear, and tapped. The plastic answered with a shy ping that rose as his knuckle traveled the rim. The sound gathered in the narrowest part of the ring. He didn't need equations to feel it, though he knew enough to respect what they said. He set the broken ring on his cart and leaned on the handle, thinking of the drawing and the way curves can refuse to let energy pile up in one painful place. He wasn't thinking about careers or titles. He was thinking about the volunteer, rubbing his temples, and a child asleep with a fan purring like a small animal at peace. Morning would bring meetings and versions and language that could make truth wear a suit. There would be a 9 a.m. demo. There would be Marcus with his confidence, Priya with her charts, and Elena with the steadiness that frightens careless people. Evan reached for a cheap ballpoint and before he could talk himself out of it, traced 2 mirrored curves on the inside of the cracked housing, thin waist tightened like breathing through a doorway. Drawing on trash wouldn't change the world. Listening might. Still, the curves looked right. He wiped his hands on the towel, set the housing down, and listened to the building hold its breath as night handed the keys to morning. Somewhere, a relay clicked. Somewhere, a compressor sighed. The problem wasn't loudness. It was the gap where the world had never been taught to pass through cleanly. What if the problem wasn't the sound at all, he thought, but the fact that nobody had learned how to listen? By 7, the city was awake, but Oralis house still felt like a church before a funeral. Elena Voss arrived early and stood with her palms on the glass, the skyline a ledger of promises she had signed with her name. On her desk lay 3 stacks engineering reports, legal's risk memos, and the board's urgents, each stack a different temperature of pressure. She unlocked the personal drawer and tapped the old tablet. 5 seconds was all she ever allowed herself. Her older brother at 12 hands clamped to his ears while a blender howled behind him, their mother reaching to help love loud as the kitchen. Elena paused the frame mid-flinch. She wanted a world where a kid like that could sit in a room and not brace for pain. Comloop was supposed to be that room. Her assistant buzzed. Marcus and Priya, 5 minutes. Elena turned the tablet face down, slid it away, and said, "Send them in." They came like opposite weather systems. Priya carried a laptop and a comm that had done its homework. Marcus carried momentum and a smirk he'd learned in rooms where money liked certainty more than truth. Priya plugged into the screen without preamble. 3 data sets, lab sweep short-term field test, and environmental chamber. We're seeing a stable spike between 2.1 and 2.8 kHz. Masking helps on paper. In human heads, it migrates. Marcus folded his arms. We notch the band. We broaden the dither. We ship. Firmware can move where you notice the pain, Priya said. It can't change the shape of the air. Elena kept her voice level. Explain it to me like I'm smart but tired. Priya allowed a half smile. Helmholtz resonance plus panel modes. The ring acts like a bottle. The vent geometry sets the note. The inner shell contributes a plate mode. Under heat and sweat material properties shift, the note sharpens. We've been fighting a violin with code. Marcus tugged at his cuff. We don't have time to retool enclosures. We don't have time to launch a migraine, Priya said. Elena raised a hand. Options. Priya clicked to a slide. A firmware mitigation cosmetics only buys headlines, risks lawsuits. B. Enclosure revision vent geometry material spec. Real fix slower. C. Hybrid path partial mitigation while we test a geometry change. Marcus exhaled dramatically. There is no third path that hits the calendar. Elena studied the graph, then studied them. There's always a third path when we remember why we exist. Begin material DFM interviews. Quietly, and lock comms, no leaks. Marcus's smile thinned. You'll spook the board. I'll inform the board," she said. "You make sure there's something worth informing them about." When they left, she dialed CFO